So tell me more about your book, The Effective Presenter, The Winning Formula for Professional Presentations.
Yeah, so, thank you. So essentially what happened, the impetus for the book was slowly but surely, as my clients, as I began to receive more and more requests, let's say,
Mhm.
to help, I realized my time was scarce, unfortunately. I am afforded some time with my professorship, which I'm very blessed and very fortunate to have. But sometimes the demands, they tend to come in waves, and I can't be everywhere at once as much as I try. And so one of the things, it's been kind of, requested of me for a few years now. A few of my friends and colleagues and clients have said, can you make a manual? Can you create a guide for us? Because, oftentimes when we would book FaceTime for maybe a half hour, and they would start, okay, this is what we have, this is what we need, and I would be, okay, so you need to structure it like this. And I would try to advise them as much as I can in the time that we have. And so eventually I had a little bit of time, here and there over the last couple of years. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to start piecing together a guide. And the guide turned into, a 14 chapter book
Wow.
with a visual of a professional presentation framework that came to fruition. And and then that's kind of how that eventually happened.
Nice. Very cool. So what tips can you give people who have presentations to give?
So people always say, so the first step is you need to know, people say the first step is you need to know your audience. I kind of disagree a little bit. I think that's the second step. I think the first step is you need to know what does a win look like? So before you go to begin your preparation to even design a presentation, say like, what outcome would be optimal for me here? And then once you have that, you say, this is what a win would look like. Then that kind of informs all the rest of your decisions. So then how do we bring that to fruition? How do we help that to happen? And so the next step becomes, okay, who's my audience?
Mhm.
And, because usually, well, not usually, always the audience plays a part in bringing that to fruition. So you usually want to inform them, you want to persuade them, something of that nature.
Right.
So I would, my first advice to anyone out there who has to approach a presentation, don't open up your PowerPoint or your Keynote or whatever you have and start making slides. That's always the default. People do that in the research because it feels like they're making progress,
Yeah.
right? But what ends up happening is they end up basically creating a PDF, like a memo with all of the
Right.
content on their slides, right?
Yeah.
So the first step is not to open your PowerPoint. First step is to envision, like, what is the optimal outcome here for you? What does a win look like?